Every time someone questions your decision, and you immediately start explaining yourself, you may think you are being reasonable. You may actually be teaching them something far more important, that their approval has power over you. The man who needs everyone to understand him cannot fully command himself, because disagreement is enough to pull him into defense. And once people discover that questioning you produces explanations, reassurance, and emotional effort, they learn exactly where your authority ends. The problem is not explaining. The problem is explaining from dependency. This is especially dangerous for the man who has spent years feeling misunderstood. Your family doubts the path. Your friends cannot see the vision. Your boss sees your current position, not your potential. So every time they question you, you try to make them understand. But the real question is colder. If you were truly certain of your direction, why does their disagreement disturb you so much? Machiavelli wrote that it was wiser to follow the real truth of a matter than the imagination of it. So forget what your explaining is supposed to mean. Look at what it actually does. Sometimes explanation creates clarity. Sometimes it creates trust. But when it comes from dependency, it reveals how little pressure is required to make you negotiate against yourself. By the end, you will have a 7-law test for knowing when explanation creates authority and when it becomes permission-seeking wearing the clothes of reason. Law 1. Explanation reveals who needs whom. Jeff Bezos understood this distinction before Amazon made him one of the richest men in history. In 1994, Bezos had a prestigious career in New York and a boss he respected. He was not a desperate man running from failure. He was already inside a respected path. He had status, income, position, and approval from a system that rewards obedience disguised as success. Then he told his boss he wanted to leave and build an online bookstore. His boss did not laugh at him. He did something more dangerous. He gave him intelligent criticism. He took Bezos on a long walk through Central Park and told him the idea sounded good, but would make even more sense for someone who did not already have such a good job. That is the kind of criticism that breaks weak ambition, because it does not attack you with stupidity. It attacks you with reason. It sounds mature. It sounds responsible. It sounds like wisdom. Bezos listened. He thought about it for 48 hours. Then he left anyway. Look carefully at what happened. He explained his decision. He listened to criticism. He allowed another man to challenge his thinking. But he did not transfer ownership of the decision. That is the difference most men never learn. Weak men think self-command means refusing advice. It does not. Self-command means advice does not automatically become authority. Bezos later told Princeton graduates that he believed he would regret not trying more than trying and failing. Within Amazon's first month of operation in 1995, the company had shipped books to all 50 United States and 45 countries. That matters because it shows the full chain. Pressure arrived, advice arrived, doubt arrived. But the decision still belonged to him. Then proof arrived. This is what separates communication from dependency. Two men can say the same sentence and communicate completely different status. One man explains because clarity helps the objective. He gives the needed information, receives feedback, adjusts if necessary, and continues moving. Another man explains because he cannot tolerate being misunderstood. His words are not serving the mission. His words are serving his emotional need for approval. Same mouth, same sentence, different position. When you explain your decision, ask yourself one question. Would I still make this decision if this person never approved? If the answer is yes, you may simply be communicating. If the answer is no, communication is not the real issue. Dependency is. and dependency has a language. It sounds like, "I just want you to understand." Sometimes that sentence means you are trying to create clarity, but sometimes what it really means is, "I need your disagreement to stop hurting before I can move." That is where authority begins to leak. Because the unsupported man has a wound that is easy to hide from the world and hard to admit to himself. He does not merely want to succeed. He wants the people who doubted him to understand that he was never delusional. He wants the family that dismissed his ambition to finally see the vision. He wants the friends who laughed quietly to feel the weight of what they failed to recognize. He wants the boss who underestimated him to realize that the man in the chair was not the full measure of the man. This desire is human, but if it starts controlling your communication, it becomes expensive. Because once you need them to understand before you can move, they no longer need to stop you. They only need to withhold approval long enough for you to stop yourself. That is why the first law is brutal. Explanation reveals who needs whom. If your direction depends on their understanding, you are not communicating from authority. You are applying for emotional permission. And the next law is worse, because once you begin applying, people may unconsciously put you through more interviews. Law 2. Every defense can create another trial. Someone asks, "Why are you doing that?" You explain. They answer, "But what about your job?" You explain again. They ask, "What if it fails?" Another explanation. They ask, "Are you sure?" Now you give them your 5-year plan, your research, your backup plan, your emotional history, your private reasons, your fear, your hope, your childhood wound, and every hidden insecurity they never asked to see. Look carefully at what happened. You entered the conversation as the owner of a decision. You left it behaving like an applicant. This is the moment many men lose authority without noticing. They think they are winning because they are answering every objection. But every answer creates another surface to question. The first explanation may have been useful. The second may still have served clarity. But by the 4th or 5th explanation, the conversation has changed. You are no longer transferring information. You are trying to exhaust resistance until the other person grants you emotional peace. And people can feel that. They may not say it consciously. They may not understand the psychology. But they sense when a man is not settled inside himself. A settled man can explain and stop. An unsettled man keeps circling. He adds details nobody requested. He anticipates accusations nobody made. He defends against imaginary attacks. He keeps speaking after the other person already understands his reasoning, because understanding was never enough. Agreement was what he wanted. That is the trap. You believe more explanation will finally close the argument. But sometimes more explanation proves that the argument is still open. Persuasion research has shown that pressure can create resistance. Psychological reactance means that when people feel their freedom of judgment is being pushed or threatened, they may counterargue or move further away from the position being forced on them. So the harder you try to force understanding, the more resistance you can create. Then their resistance makes you explain more, and suddenly you are trapped in a loop. Question, defense, objection, stronger defense, stronger resistance. This is not communication anymore. This is emotional negotiation. And the hidden cost is not only that they may respect you less. The deeper cost is that you begin respecting yourself less. Because every time you reopen a settled decision to calm someone else's discomfort, you teach your nervous system a dangerous lesson. Disagreement is a command, not information, not feedback, not perspective. A command. So now any doubtful face can summon your defense. Any skeptical tone can pull you into performance. Any disappointed silence can make you revise your boundaries. And this is how men who call themselves independent still live under other people's verdicts. They are not physically controlled. They are psychologically interruptible. The solution is not to become mute. The solution is to know when enough has already been said. Every additional sentence should have to earn its existence. Before you continue explaining, ask, does this sentence create clarity? Does it solve a real problem? Does it improve coordination? Or am I speaking because silence would force me to feel their disapproval? That last question exposes everything. Because if the only reason you are still talking is that silence would make you feel rejected, then you are not building respect. You are offering emotional evidence that their reaction has control over you. And once people discover what discomfort makes you speak, they begin learning what moves you. Law 3. People study what moves you. Not always consciously. This is not about becoming paranoid. This is not about imagining that every person around you is secretly plotting against you. That is childish. The real mechanism is colder and simpler. Human beings repeat behaviors that produce results. If questioning you repeatedly produces more access, more reassurance, more concessions, more attention, and more emotional labor, questioning you becomes useful. Imagine a co-worker asks you to take on extra work. You say, "I cannot this weekend." They look disappointed. Immediately you begin explaining. "It is just because I've had a lot going on, and I promised my family, and I know the deadline matters, and maybe I can find a few hours Sunday." Stop. Nobody negotiated with you yet. You negotiated against yourself. Their disappointment was enough to change your position. That is valuable information. You may think you were being kind. You may think you were being professional. But the mechanism underneath is clear. Their emotional signal moved your boundary before they had to apply real pressure. This is how people learn you. They learn whether anger makes you fold. They learn whether disappointment makes you explain. They learn whether silence makes you chase. They learn whether criticism makes you perform. They learn whether guilt makes you surrender your time, energy, attention, and focus. Again, this does not mean everyone is manipulating you. But manipulation is not required for a pattern to become dangerous. If a behavior gives people more influence over you, they are more likely to repeat it. Machiavelli wrote that a wise ruler should establish himself on that which is in his own control and not in that of others. Forget the monarchy. Keep the principle. If your emotional stability depends on another person's approval, part of your internal state exists under external control. That is the real danger of compulsive explaining, not the number of words, the dependency revealed by them. And this is where unsupported men are most vulnerable. When you have spent years feeling doubted, ignored, or misunderstood, approval feels like oxygen. You may tell yourself you do not care. You may speak the language of independence. You may post quotes about solitude, discipline, and power. But then one person questions your direction, and suddenly you are giving them a courtroom presentation. That is not power. That is pride, trying to protect an identity that has not yet produced enough proof. If you are the right viewer, stop mistaking motion for progress. You already know the problem is not that you lack information. The problem is that part of you still wants a system for becoming undeniable while no one is clapping. Patreon is where I build the deeper system, private frameworks, unfiltered breakdowns, proof, positioning, discipline, funnels, leverage, and self-command. It is not for men who want comfort, entertainment, or excuses. It is for men who are ready to stop defending potential and start constructing evidence. The decision is yours. And now we reach the distinction most men never learn. There is powerful explanation. And there is defensive explanation. They can sound almost identical from the outside, but they come from completely different places inside the man. Law 4. Competence explains. Insecurity defends. People do not only hear your reasons, they read your position. Researchers have studied what they call powerful and powerless speech styles. In one classic experiment, participants heard the same substantive testimony delivered in different styles. Speech with more hedges, hesitations, intensifiers, and questioning intonation was judged differently from more direct speech. The more powerful style produced higher perceived credibility and greater attraction toward the speaker. The lesson is not that you should become robotic. The lesson is that your communication carries status signals whether you intend them or not. When your voice sounds like it is asking for permission, people feel it. When your words keep softening themselves before anyone attacks, people feel it. When you keep adding reasons because you are afraid the first reason was not enough, people feel it. You may think you are making your case stronger, but sometimes you are showing that the case is not settled inside you. Later research also found that markers such as hedges and hesitations can reduce perceptions of authoritativeness and persuasion in some contexts. But this is where shallow dominance advice becomes stupid. The answer is not never hedge. The answer is not never explain. The answer is not always sound certain even when you are ignorant. That is not authority. That is performance. Research by Alison Fregali found that when group members were highly interdependent, a softer, supposedly powerless speech style could actually receive more status because cooperative qualities became more valuable. So the real law is calibration. Authority is not volume. Authority is proportion. Strategic explanation is concise. It is relevant. It is proportionate. It is connected to the objective. It gives the information needed, then stops. Defensive explanation is different. It repeats itself. It anticipates accusations nobody made. It becomes emotionally loaded. It continues after the necessary information has already been transferred. That is your signal. When the other person understands your reasoning but simply does not agree, continuing to explain is no longer necessarily communication. You may now be trying to control their verdict. And that is a dangerous addiction because you cannot build self-command while needing to manage every other person's opinion of you. There are moments when explanation strengthens credibility. When your team needs clarity, explain. When trust has been damaged and repair is necessary, explain. When a decision affects other people and coordination matters, explain. When leadership requires understanding, explain. But when you are explaining because someone's disagreement has destabilized your identity, stop. The problem is not your vocabulary. The problem is your dependency. A competent man can speak clearly without begging to be believed. He can clarify without shrinking. He can answer without reopening ownership. He can receive criticism without letting criticism become command. That is the difference. And once you understand that difference, you reach a harder form of power. The ability to end a conversation without needing to win it. Law 5. Authority requires the ability to end the conversation. Imagine your family tells you you are making a mistake. The old response is familiar. No, you do not understand. I have researched the market. I have this plan. I have talked to these people. Look, if I can just explain. That response feels reasonable while you are saying it. But listen to the emotional position underneath it. You are not simply giving information. You are trying to pull them into agreement so you can feel settled. Now compare it with a different response. I understand why you see it that way. I have made my decision. Or, that is one way to look at it. I am proceeding differently. Or, I have explained the reasoning. The decision stands. No insult. No performance. No childish dominance ritual, just closure. This is difficult for unsupported men because closure feels like abandonment. When no one has believed in you for years, ending the conversation can feel like giving up on being understood. But sometimes refusing to continue defending yourself is not emotional withdrawal. It is self-respect. Machiavelli warned rulers against appearing fickle and irresolute. In The Prince, he wrote that a ruler should make his judgments appear firm. Let him show that his judgments are irrevocable. Do not imitate a Renaissance prince literally. Extract the mechanism. When people learn that enough resistance always causes you to reopen settled decisions, resistance becomes rational. When they learn that you listen, evaluate, decide, and can then remain settled, the structure changes. You are no longer trying to prove that nobody can question you. Only insecure men require that fantasy. You are proving something stronger. Questioning you does not automatically control you. This is what real authority sounds like. Not loud, not cruel, not dramatic, settled. A man with authority can say, "I hear you," without saying, "I obey you." He can say, "That is useful feedback," without saying, "You now own the decision." He can say, "I understand your concern," without transforming concern into command. Most men confuse openness with obedience. They think if they listen, they must yield. They think if they acknowledge a point, they must surrender the frame. So they swing between two weak extremes. Either they over-explain like applicants, or they shut down like frightened boys pretending to be kings. Neither is power. Power is the ability to stay open without becoming owned. This matters in business. It matters in family. It matters in relationships. It matters in negotiation. It matters in every room where people test whether your boundary is real or decorative. A boundary is not real because you announce it. A boundary becomes real when it survives pressure. And one of the cleanest ways to make a boundary real is to stop offering endless explanations after the necessary information has already been given. The point is not to punish people with silence. The point is to stop rewarding resistance with unlimited access to your emotional energy. Because if every doubt receives a speech, every critic receives a performance, and every disappointed face receives a concession, then you are not being mature. You are training the world to question you harder. But now there is a trap. Because some men hear this and decide that silence itself is power, it is not. Law 6. Silence is powerful. Only when competence exists behind it. A man who cannot explain his reasoning may not look powerful. He may simply look unprepared. A man who says nothing during a negotiation because he has alternatives is dangerous. A man who says nothing because he has no idea what to say is exposed. Same silence, different position. This is why the unsupported man cannot hide behind "move in silence" forever. Sometimes silence is strategy. Sometimes silence is fear wearing expensive language. You still need to publish the work, make the offer, ask for the opportunity, communicate expectations, negotiate compensation, defend a professional judgment when accountability requires it. Explain complex ideas when leadership requires understanding. Real authority does not fear explanation. It simply refuses to use explanation as emotional anesthesia. The goal is not to become mysterious. The goal is to become so competent that you can explain clearly, stop cleanly, and survive disagreement. Preparation gives you fewer reasons to ramble. Competence gives you fewer reasons to bluff. Alternatives give you fewer reasons to beg. Results give you fewer reasons to promise. That is the difference between silence and emptiness. Silence backed by proof creates pressure. Silence backed by nothing creates suspicion. If you refuse to explain because you are afraid your reasoning is weak, you are not powerful. you are hiding. If you refuse to explain because the necessary information has already been given and the decision is yours, that is different. If you stay quiet because you have no plan, you are exposed. If you stay quiet because your plan is already in motion, your proof will speak soon enough. This is the part fake power content never tells you. You cannot posture your way into authority. You cannot quote Machiavelli while your life has no structure. You cannot talk about dominance while your discipline collapses after 3 days. You cannot demand respect for a version of yourself that has not produced evidence. A man earns the right to speak less by becoming more prepared. He earns the right to defend less by becoming more measurable. He earns the right to ignore certain opinions by building enough proof that those opinions no longer control the path. If you are the right viewer, stop using philosophy to decorate avoidance. You already know the difference between building evidence and protecting your ego with language. The deeper Patreon system is for men who want private frameworks, unfiltered breakdowns, proof, positioning, discipline, funnels, leverage, and self-command, not more emotional entertainment. It is not for men who want to feel powerful while staying unchanged. It is for men who are ready to make their results stronger than their explanations. The decision is yours. And this creates the final problem, because the deepest form of over-explaining is not explaining a decision. It is explaining an identity that still lacks evidence. Law 7. Stop defending the identity. Build evidence for it. This is where unsupported men lose years. You know who you believe you can become, but your family sees your history, your friends see your current position, the market sees your current output. The world does not have access to the private version of you that exists inside your head. So you try to explain him. You tell people about the business you will build, the body you will create, the money you will make, the discipline you are developing, the life you are going to escape, and every speech temporarily protects your pride. Because speaking about future proof feels better than confronting the absence of present proof. But potential has one weakness: nobody outside you is obligated to believe it. That is not injustice, that is information. You may truly be underestimated. You may also still be unproven. Stop confusing the two. This one distinction can save you years. Being underestimated means people fail to recognize existing value. Being unproven means the value may exist inside you, but it has not yet become visible, measurable, repeatable, or useful enough for the world to update its judgment. The unsupported man often wants the respect of the proven man while still living on the evidence of the potential man. That is why he over-explains. He is not only defending a choice, he is defending the invisible empire inside his head. He wants people to honor the man he intends to become before that man has left enough evidence in reality. But the world does not pay for intention. The market does not reward private ambition. Your family may love you, but they may still judge your future through your past. Your friends may know your dreams, but they may still measure you by your current behavior. Your boss may see your effort, but he may still value you according to your current leverage. So stop arguing with the scoreboard. Change the evidence. You say you are disciplined? Show me 6 months. You say you are valuable? Show me measurable results. You say the business can work? Find the first customer. You say you deserve more money? Create scarcity, alternatives, proof, and negotiating power. You say people misunderstand you? Perhaps. But becoming understood is not the highest objective. Becoming measurable is stronger. Because once evidence arrives, the conversation changes. Potential becomes proof. Explanation becomes execution. Permission becomes ownership. This is the identity shift that matters most. The unsupported man stops trying to convince the room that he is becoming powerful. He begins building a position from which the room's disbelief has less consequence. That is when pride becomes useful. Not when it makes you defensive, when it makes you disciplined, not when it makes you demand recognition, when it makes you produce evidence so undeniable that recognition becomes cheaper than denial. There is a cold dignity in refusing to beg people to see what you have not yet built. There is a colder dignity in building it anyway. So here is the verdict. Explaining yourself does not automatically make people respect you less. That claim would be childish. Explaining from dependency can. Explaining to coordinate is intelligence. Explaining to teach is competence. Explaining to repair trust is maturity. Explaining because somebody's disagreement has destabilized you is something else. That is permission-seeking wearing the clothes of reason. The operating principle is simple. Explain to create clarity. Never explain merely to purchase permission. Before you speak, ask 3 questions. Does this person need this information? Does giving it improve the objective? And if they still disagree afterward, can I remain settled? If the third answer is no, that is where your work begins. Not on your tone, not on your vocabulary, not on finding the perfect sentence that finally makes everyone understand you. On your dependency. The man you are trying to become cannot spend his life defending himself to every person who remembers the man he used to be. Listen to criticism. Extract intelligence. Correct yourself when the evidence proves you wrong. But stop confusing openness with obedience. Stop confusing disagreement with authority. Stop confusing being understood with being free. Machiavelli's deeper lesson was not that a man should become cruel, deceptive, or silent. It was that survival begins when you stop confusing appearances with mechanisms and start looking at what actually controls outcomes. So, control what belongs to you, your preparation, your competence, your decisions, your boundaries, your proof. And when those are strong enough, you will discover something most men never experience. You do not need to win every argument. You need a life that does not collapse when someone refuses to agree with you. The next time someone doubts your decision, do not ask, "How do I make them understand?" Ask, "Do they need to understand for me to move?" If not, stop defending. Build the evidence.